Good morning, church. Good to see each of you. We're glad that you are here. We're thankful for you to be here as we continue. We got 2 more weeks in this series, this week and next, revolving around the idea of how we look as a church and how we function as a church and how we think about one another as a church. It was a quote I think I've used here not way too long ago from Chip Dodd, and Chip is a Christian counselor in the Nashville area. My first cousin Alex, which some of you know, works at his center, and Chip wrote a book called Voice of the Heart, and talks a lot about emotions and feelings and that sort of thing. And one of the things he's told Alex, I don't know if it's even in print anywhere, but he's told him the definition of a dysfunctional family. And the question was kind of raised is, what is a dysfunctional family? And if I asked you what is a dysfunctional family, my guess is we would have about 100 different answers about what a dysfunctional family is. There would be one answer that would probably be the most common, I think, if this was Steve Harvey, a Family Feud, right? If this was the survey, I think the number one answer, what is a dysfunctional family? I think the number one answer would be mine, right? Mine. But he says that a dysfunctional family is any family that does not do feelings. Any family that does not do feelings. In other words, it's not a safe place to feel. It's not a safe place to emote. It's not a safe place to let the sensitive parts of your life be seen and exposed, and to be able to be vulnerable in the space and in the place. Where emotions and traumas and hurts are not welcome. He would argue that that is what ultimately functionally makes a dysfunctional family. And I like that. I've been using it a lot, but I've also begin to think, because family systems are not way different than church systems, is how much does that maybe apply to churches too? That maybe churches, whether or not a church is functional or dysfunctional, is ultimately decided about whether or not it is a safe place to have problems. Whether or not it's a safe place that you can be present, have problems, and still be part and belong. You've heard me use the terminology frequently, the difference between a Mary church and a Martha church. And a Martha church is going to decide whether or not they're functional by how many things they have on the calendar, by how many that they're going to be really good at keeping numbers and checking boxes and seeing that we've done this, and this, and we're functional because here are the numbers to prove it. Where a Mary church is going to be much more about, are we sitting at the feet of Jesus? Are we allowing Jesus' presence to rule our lives? And so some churches determine worth and value by those quantifiable things. And I would just say that maybe a good analogy when we start talking about this concept of confessing one another, and I'm going to bring this all together of why we're starting here in just a second, is that, and I actually thought about it, maybe a new church motto. I don't think anybody else is going to go for it, but here we are. This is my new projected. I'm going to skip ahead one more here, Don. We'll come back to that next one in just a second. Go one more, and we'll come back to that. All right. Palisades Church of Christ. Everything is not okay, and that's okay. I like that. That this is a place that you can come when you're not okay. This is a place that you want to come when you're not okay, where the feelings of not being okay are welcome. The problem is that when some churches don't allow problems to come in, it leaves hurting people with just a couple of options. You either have to hide your problems, or you express your problems and you're pushed to the fringe because you don't look a certain way and don't act a certain way. You can attend, but you're never going to feel like you're belonging because everybody else is hiding all their problems. Everybody else is putting on a picture and a show. And so I've been asking this question, go back to this, is confession. Why do we struggle with confession? And I've thought about this a lot of different ways through time, is we struggle to confess. My friend that I discussed with who's Catholic regularly, one of the things he talks about is moving from the Church of Christ into Catholicism, is that the thing that has helped him grow a little bit, he's felt helped him grow, is having regular confession times. And he would argue, and I think I would agree with him, that we don't have the mechanism set up very well for people to have confessional times. And I'm not saying that we have to go to confessionals. I'm not going to sit in my office and have y'all stand outside and pass it through the door or anything like that. But I do think that there's some value in having safe spaces to share your hurts. And I worry that maybe the problem has been misidentified, because so often, why do people not confess their problems? Why there's some pride issues that happen with this. I'm not denying that. And we could have a good long sermon about swallowing our pride and being able to share with others. But my fear is that people have been hurt in churches. People have shared in churches in the past, and it's come back to bite them. And in their mind, church is no longer a safe space. Church is no longer the place I can go and confess and feel like that's going to be handled with care and concern. And so my thing is I think that maybe, just maybe, when we think about this confessing to one another, we not only have to implore people to confess to one another, because it's a biblical thing to confess to one another, but we really need to focus on the idea of, are we a safe space, a safe place for people to confess? If somebody comes to me with their traumas and their hurts and their issues, what will we do with it? This week I was having a discussion with somebody. I won't share everything about it just because of the nature of it. It wasn't in a counseling session or anything, but it was a situation I can't share everything about. But it was a person that I had not talked to in quite some time, and they were going through some real stuff. And we were just chatting. And I told him, that I was doing counseling now. He didn't know that, and we were doing some counseling stuff. And he said, he asked me the question. He said, "Well, do you feel called to that?" This was before I recognized what I was preaching on this week, by the way. So I had not even thought this through totally. And so I didn't prepare this answer. It wasn't because of this that I had this answer. And I said, one of the things that has been life-giving about it is that when people come into a counseling office, they're a lot less guarded. They share a lot more. They tell a lot more. They are willing to be much more vulnerable and open. And then later that day, I opened up and said, "All right, what's next on the calendar? Speak is this thing." And I got to thinking that's backwards. That's backwards. I mean, I believe in the sanctity of that office, and that's good that it's there, but church shouldn't be a place where we feel like we have to hide our struggles and our hurts. It should be that people say, "Hey, I can go to church because there I can really be myself. I don't have to put on a guard or a face and pretend to be something that I'm not." And so it just made me ask the question is, why does church not feel like that? Why do I feel like people are more, and that's the thing is, and sometimes this has happened. Sometimes I'll have clients who figure out what I do. Sometimes they find me through what I do, but some of them don't know, and they might find out later, and immediately I see a change in them. It's like once I get associated as being a church person, they have to put more guards up, not less. And church, that's just not the way it should be. And I'm not blaming anyone here individually. I just think that when we talk about this concept of how do we confess more, how do we be more open in church, that maybe the problem has been that you've been hurt by church. You've been hurt by people in church. You've shared something. It's been weaponized against you. It's been used for their power and their information and their need to gossip and their feeling to gossip. And I want to confess, I struggle with that. I struggle with gossip. I struggle with that urge to want to share the things that I know. And maybe you do too. But if we're going to be holy people, called to be the kind of place, if we're going to be a functional family, people have got to have safe spaces to go and share their hurts and recognize and realize that those hurts are not going to be weaponized and used against them to hurt them. And I'm afraid that some people have just been so hurt by church that they no longer view church as a safe place. And so maybe when we talk about confession, the primary problem is not just about jumping into the pool. Maybe one of the primary problems is the water safe? It's where we're jumping a safe place that we know that we're going to be taken care of, that we know we're going to be jumping into. I remember this week I was thinking about this when I was thinking about that idea of water and safe space. When we were in college, there's this, we called it Turkey Creek. I don't know what it actually was. The reason we called it Turkey Creek is that we had a friend. We called him Fish. His last name was Salmon. He's still a friend. But Daniel, his name's Daniel Salmon. I might remember, he won't mind me sharing this at all. So Fish was not just Fish because he was Daniel Salmon. Fish was Fish because we could convince him to jump into any body of water that existed. And I'll never forget, we went out on this backcountry road one time, and I had one friend who was like poking stuff out of the way to get him to jump off of it, and it was a dead turkey that he was jumping. Oh, it was gross, and so we called it Turkey Creek. And he got Fish because the name Fish, last name Salmon, it works. But he would also jump into any body of water. If you got a body of water I remember us. I got a ticket for this. It wasn't a ticket; it was a warning. We went swimming in a state park in February. It was about 25 degrees outside, and apparently you're not supposed to do that. I didn't know until it got out of the water, but the game warden came over, and we didn't get tickets. We got warnings and told to leave. But Fish was always, if there was ever jumping into, we would go on retreats during off seasons at camps, and he would jump into the water. He would, and like none of us would because we didn't know what was in the water, right? Fish just had this ability to put that aside and jump into the water. And he almost jumped right on that dead turkey, by the way, in Turkey Creek. It was off of a bridge on an old back road. I mean, it was. We had one friend down there with a stick saying, "Oh yeah, I think it's deep enough," and that was not going to be good enough for Daniel to jump, but it was good enough for Fish. And I'm afraid sometimes when we just say, "Hey, confess," just share it with the church, we're asking them to jump into water that they're not sure it's safe to jump into. And most of us are not Fish. Most of us actually care to know what's going to happen once we jump and whether or not it'll be safe. And so I want to just talk about this morning, this concept. Let's go into the Bible a little bit. We're going to spend a little time in James. We're going to go through a couple of texts here. This is James 5. If anyone among you is in trouble, let them pray. If you're happy, let them sing songs of praise. If anyone among you is sick, let them call on the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. He continues, and the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Notice what happens there. Notice what the church is called to be here. It says the church is a place where that you pray when you're in trouble. It's a place you sing when you're joyful. You call the elders when you're sick. You confess when you've sinned. Like I was just thinking about what does James describing there, and it really fits in well with my description of what makes a family functional or dysfunctional. He's saying, what's he saying here? I think he's saying, hey, the church is a place where you do feelings, where you bring your hurts, where you bring your struggles, you bring the things that are most pressing on you. That's like the definition. It's a place where you can pray, a place where you can sing when you're happy. You can be sad and in trouble. You can be happy. You can be sick. You can be sinful. And the church is the place that you're supposed to come with that. He's saying this is supposed to be the safe space for everyone to be able to land. And so it doesn't stop there. Private prayer, though. Notice what he says. Therefore, this is verse 16, therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. I think what he's saying there is confession is where the weight gets lifted. It's where it comes out onto the table. And notice the end result, the end goal here. What is the end goal according to James. The end goal of confessing is not so everybody can know your business. It's not so everybody can get all up in your business. It's not that at all. The goal is healing. And anytime we are pushing people to confess, if it's for our own sick, twisted desire to know stuff about people, which I think we all have that, or maybe I'm the only one, I don't know. But if that's what is pushing us to tell people to confess people, we've got it all wrong. The end goal is that healing begins when we have confession. David would echo this over into Psalm 32. He said, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groanings all day long. When I was hiding secret stuff, it would eat away at me. And he says, for day and night, your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. David says, I was going through some stuff, and I was trying to hide stuff, and when I didn't say anything out loud, when I tried to keep it all to myself, I felt like I was dying inside. That's some pretty strong language that he says that's playing out here with him. And he says, the next verse 5, he says, but then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I took the mask off. And I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord. I'm going to be forthcoming with God. And you forgave the guilt of my sin. Some of us know exactly what David meant here because we've lived it and we've felt it. Some of us, even today, are still here. And we realize that there's an emotional and there's even a physical toll to carrying around guilt. I want to zoom out just a little bit with that to remind you that does not just revolve around sin. There's a physical and emotional toll to carry around guilt and shame. And sometimes we're carrying around guilt and shame because of our own wrongdoing and our own sin. And that's exactly what David is addressing there. It's his own sin that has led him to this space and this spot. But I would also just remind us that some of you are carrying around guilt and shame that was put on you because you were hurt, you've been wounded, you've got shame that you were told that you're supposed to feel, you've got shame because of you were inherited in your families. Some of you have guilt because you have wounds that you never asked for. And I say that just to remind you that guilt and shame doesn't necessarily always mean that you're the guilty one. We all have had guilt and shame because we were the guilty one, though. But regardless, I just want us to acknowledge that carrying around guilt and shame and hurt weighs on us. It makes it hard to breathe in life, to let it out, to express ourselves. And we feel that weight and that shame, and we walk in the church, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. How are you? And so often, it's the greatest lie we tell every week. Here's the problem, is sometimes there's people that are craving to say something, they just don't feel like they have a place that they can. Because it's been burned when you did confess, it's been weaponized against you, it's been spread beyond where you said it. You don't have to come and confess to the whole church every little detail of every little private sin you've ever had. The Bible doesn't support that. I think that if you have public sin, it's best to address it publicly when you can. If you have private sin, sometimes it's fine for you to go find somebody that you trust and can share with. And I think that's biblical. I think it's actually a good thing. Because I imagine that if we really had every week, we had time for everybody to come up and tell everything they'd done wrong all week, we would need to serve lunch and dinner every week. Okay? But so I'm not telling you to say that. I'm simply saying that some of you have went privately to another Christian and you've been burned by it. You've been hurt by it. It's been weaponized. Safety matters. We have to be creating the soil of a place where people can bring their hurts and they're welcomed and embraced and they're supported, not shamed, not made to feel guilty. Some of you have shame and guilt because people in church have done you wrong and hurt you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I would love to tell you I've probably never been guilty of that. I've never added shame or guilt to somebody, but I think that would probably be a gross misacknowledgement, because I imagine that there's people around hurting because of things I've done in church. And I'm not calling us to perfection here. I'm calling us to create sacred spaces where hurt and shame are welcome. Gossip and using knowledge as a tool for power are not. I got to thinking this week of what biblical story kind of personifies this. Now, I landed with one that was maybe not where I expected this to land. I thought about Joseph. Joseph, the spouse of Mary. And what happened with Joseph when Joseph hears the news that Mary is pregnant? Joseph has full confidence when he hears the news that she's pregnant that she has done what? Sinned. She hasn't sinned, but he believes she has. Because the idea that you're pregnant and you haven't had a sexual relationship with somebody is bonkers, right? Like, if I was Joseph, I would think that Mary had sinned. And I think I would be justified in believing that before I knew anything different or better. But I love what the Bible says about what Joseph intended to do when he thought Mary had sinned, and not just sinned against God. He believed that she had sinned against the very commitment that she had made to him. In his eyes, not only had she sinned against God, she had sinned directly against him. And notice what he says. Because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law, he loved God. He didn't want to do anything wrong with God in this. But he also did not want to expose her to public disgrace. He recognized that the weight of sin was going to be plenty heavy enough on his own, that he didn't need to add to this verse explains to me why God chose Joseph. It was going to be a safe home. It was going to be a home that did feelings, right? Sometimes we think, and we've gotten better with emotions and feelings, and we use different terminology. And the generation, if you're a little bit older generation, there was a generation, especially the men in the home, you were excused, like you got a write-off, like a little pass. You went to work, so you didn't have to do feelings. And that was wrong. And there's a lot of stuff having to happen to fix that. But I just want to remind you, that's not how it has always been, okay? American culture is not the only culture there's ever been. And there has been long history of men not doing feelings and not doing emotions. It's not just America, but it's not every society has been that way. And I would just remind you that Joseph did feelings. He had empathy. He actually cared about how this was going to affect her. And remember, this was Joseph, the man who had been done wrong to, had been shamed. This wasn't just going to be public disgrace for her. The fact that the way he's handling this was probably going to even add public disgrace for him, because let's be honest, Joseph's thinking this through. He says, hey, I want to be faithful to the law, but I don't want to disgrace her publicly. But you know what happens eventually if you're pregnant? You have a baby. And you can maybe hide that you're pregnant for a while, but guess what you cannot hide? A baby. I mean, not very effectively, right? I mean, it was going to come out. And there were going to be people asking the question, oh, did Joseph do this? Who did this? I mean, this was not going to be easy for Joseph. Even if he tries to do this quietly, it's not going to be easy. But he has the heart that says, hey, Mary, you messed up. Mary didn't mess up, but in his mind, she had. Mary, you messed up, but I'm not here to add hurt and shame to your hurt and your shame. What if we had churches that acted like Joseph? What if we did that? Because before the angel ever tells him the truth, Joseph has already chosen mercy. He's already chosen discretion. He's already chosen how he's going to act. And what a powerful insight it is for us to see and to kind of be able to do this. Joseph was entrusted with some knowledge here, and notice what he did not do. He did not weaponize it. He didn't want to spread it. He didn't use it for power. Joseph used what I call sacred restraint. Joseph had a reason to be angry. Joseph had a reason to be mad and upset and hurt. He wanted to be faithful to God. He didn't want to do anything wrong. But he actually thought, hey, I don't need to make this even worse than it is. What if we, when people came to us with their hurts, when people came to us with the fact that they've been abused, what if we didn't try to explain it away? What if we didn't try to fix it? What if we just became a safe place for people to listen, for people to talk, for people to be heard? What if the church truly became that way? I would just remind us that confession will never thrive in a place where exposure is the goal, where exposing people and hurting people is the goal. It only thrives where James says, hey, why do you confess to one another? So that you may be healed. If healing is the goal, well, that says we have to ask questions. We have to use this holy restraint, right? We have to ask the question if when they confess, do I need to share this with others? And if so, who do I need to share this with? Not so that I can feel better about myself because I knew something, but rather because I'm wanting to get this person healing. And then we ask the questions, all right, who can help this person heal? And we may even sometimes have to ask, who do I need to make sure doesn't hear this because they may weaponize it against them? We're using holy discretion. I would just encourage the church that Jesus had in mind, to be this safe space, to use sacred restraint. What if the church was known as the safest place on earth to fall apart? We think about falling apart. What do we think about when we think about falling apart? Oh, you need to be at home or a hospital. But what if the place of healing that we associate in our mind, I'm falling apart, I need to be at church? And that takes all of us. It takes all of us making an effort to change the environments of churches. It takes all of us consistently making church a safe place where you are embraced when you share your hurts, where you are loved and supported, and where it's not just a walk of shame to tell us your problems, but rather it's a walk of embrace and compassion. I hope as we think about this from a church perspective, I hope that you've also thought about it from personal perspective. I want to push you to confess when you struggle, confess when you sin, confess, find safe places to land. I really do. But I really today just wanted you to think about who am I? Am I a safe place for people to come to? Am I a safe place for people to fall apart? Because you know how you make a church a safe place to fall apart? You get 100 people who are safe places to fall apart. If we got 100 people who are all safe places for people to fall apart, guess what? We would have a safe church. And this church is safer than the vast majority. It's the safest church I've ever been in this regard. I'm pushing us to even more. I'm pushing us to be available for people to hurt in this space and in this place. Available to be a place where people can fall apart here. Some of us need to confess. Some of us need to become safe enough to receive confession. I want us, as we close this down this morning, I've written a small little prayer for us, and I want us to pray it together. And so we're going to say it together, and I want to take it slow, and I just want us to let it sink in for us this morning. And then after we pray this prayer, I'll lead us in one more prayer, and then we'll wrap up. All right. First, read it to yourself. There's 3 slides here, I think. And then we will read it together in just a moment. All right, let's say it together. Lord, give us the courage to confess and the strength to be safe places for others. Read this for a moment. We'll say it together in a minute. Let us be a community of healing, not power or humiliation. Teach us to be like Joseph. Teach us sacred discretion. Amen. Teach us, God. Make this a safe place. Make this a place that feelings are safe, emotions are safe, hurt is safe, a place where people can bring their trauma, they can bring their sins, and be welcomed with open arms. Give us the power and the strength to be like Joseph. Thank you for being a safe place for us. Always ready to hear. Always anxiously waiting to forgive. You're a good God. You have been merciful to us. You have shown sacred discretion to us. Give us the power to go and do likewise. In Jesus we pray and say together, amen. Whew. I hope we will be I hope that when we go to eternity, God will say that was a merry church. They wanted to sit at my feet. They wanted to hear truth. They wanted to hear truth when it hurt, truth when it gave life. I hope that He'll look at us as a church and say that was a place that people could be safe. I hope. This morning you may have something you want to confess, and we want to be safe for you. And we don't want to weaponize it. I say we, I know I don't, and I believe that the hearts of most people here don't. I really believe that. And I believe that you'll be embraced and loved. And anything I said today is to push us to be better. It's not to push down, because as I said, I think this church does better than most. And I hope that you feel that and sense that. We're going to sing a song in a minute as we do, and that song means a couple of different things and the way we normally do things. It's something, if you've got something big and heavy in public, or you just need a whole lot of prayers, you can come and let it be known. But here's always my prayer, is that you don't walk out the door carrying the weight of the things that you come in with. You lay them at the feet of Jesus, and you lay them at the feet of Jesus' hands and feet here on the earth. Not so that you just fulfill a command. It's as James said, so that you can be healed, so that you can walk out of here feeling lighter. I already know, actually, today we're about to have a couple of baptisms too. We're excited about that. Some people who are about to walk a new way of life, to put on Jesus. We're excited about that, and we're going to do that in just a minute too. And we'll tell more about that in a minute. And just remind you, hey, this is a place where we do emotions. It's where we do feelings. And when people put their life over to Jesus, they need a big hug around the neck. They need a congratulations, but they also need to hear we're here to support you. We're here to help guide you. If you have a spiritual need, though, and you say, I need to let that known to the church, this will be a time for you to let that be shared. We're going to stand up together, sing a song. If you have that need, come while we'll sing.